Hi there and welcome back to what I think is perhaps the greatest ever channel to exist on youtube.com. I'm going to tread very carefully today, but we are revisiting Eddie Howe chat. I will admit that I got a little bit carried away about 10 days or so ago when we had all the various reports about Eddie Howe. I wasn't the only one. There were others that got carried away, a lot of others, but that doesn't make what I did right. I had a few videos that were probably a little bit over the top, given that it was still just speculation with Eddie Howe. I've battened down the hatches on the channel. Over the last week, we've had very little Howe content, but we're going to revisit today with an open mind and a level mind, I suppose. Things have gone very quiet on the Eddie Howe front. We went from having multiple reports, sometimes only a couple of hours apart, and all the major outlets in this country saying about Howe, giving dates for him possibly being unveiled, even naming players who he could sign when he comes into Celtic. Since then, things have gone really, really quiet. We've had barely no reports on Eddie Howe, on the next Celtic manager, and that silence has been interpreted as being a bad thing by lots of members of the Celtic support. Now, I'm not having a go at those people at all. Everyone's a bit on edge at the moment because we realise how big an appointment this could be for Celtic and how much of an important moment we're at in terms of our recent club's history. We're at a real crossroads at the moment. The next managerial appointment has to be a good one. That's why everyone's so on edge. But as I say, a lot of people have interpreted the silence around Eddie Howe and Celtic as being a bad thing. I am here in this video today to tell you why we shouldn't necessarily think of it as a bad thing. I'm not going to do it myself. I'm going to do it through the words and feelings of the key players in the Eddie Howe negotiations, looking at what they're saying and letting you come to your own conclusion. Right, so far so good. I will take this little moment in the video to put in my usual mention for subscribers. If you're watching this video and you've not yet subscribed to the channel, I really would appreciate you doing that. We post daily Celtic content, loads of different topics, loads of different guests. I even had someone tweeting me the other day to say that he now times his dinner with when our videos are uploaded in the evening. Now, I don't know why you'd want to look at me while you're eating, but each to their own. At least he's a subscriber, so should you be. So the key to this video is playing everything down and being very calm. There's other outlets there that will try and create the drama to do with Eddie Howe and Celtic. It helps generate clicks, it helps generate paper sales. That's their prerogative, fair enough. We're not going to do it in 67 Hail Hail. The guys over at 67hailhail.com haven't been doing it. They've been playing everything cool, telling you what you need to know and letting you come to your own conclusion. So let's take a look at what Celtic are saying. Now, a lot of people got very excited at the weekend when Eddie Howe's name was mentioned in an official Celtic broadcast. The broadcast in question was the Path to Paradise coverage for the 6-0 win over Livingston, and Jackie McNamara and Alan Stubbs, along with Connie McLaughlin, had a bit of a natter about Eddie Howe before the game. This led to a lot of people thinking that Howe was a done deal, Howe was back on. Why would Celtic, an official broadcast, mention Eddie Howe if there wasn't something to it? Now, without meaning to be a complete Buzz Killington when it comes to this, I do think that we shouldn't read too much into that. Celtic have been covering a lot more diverse issues this year on the Path to Paradise as opposed to the usual Celtic TV coverage. I think it's got something to do with Sunset and Vine taking on the reins and the fact they've tried to make it more of a BT sport production as opposed to an in-house Celtic TV production. They've been more eccentric, basically. So what I'm saying is, don't read too much into it. The actual last official correspondence we've had from Celtic or anyone at Celtic with regards to a new manager was that Q&A from Dermot Desmond. Now, the Q&A told us... what was that thing it told us? Oh, that was it. Absolutely nothing. It told us absolutely nothing. We've had to go to other quotes from John Kennedy recently and also a Celtic player. Now, the Kennedy quote's first. It's difficult, I understand. I think people expect that everybody behind the scenes knows everything, but some things have to remain private to the point that decisions are ready to be made. We've just got to be patient in this time. It's been a difficult season, but the club want to do the right thing moving forward. Sometimes that takes a bit longer than everyone would like, but we've got to be patient and keep building forward. So that was John Kennedy, again calling for patience, calling for a bit of calmness. I think that's the key thing to take from this video. Scott Bain probably didn't get the memo the previous week. He was swept up by what I'm now calling Howe-mania, that sun-filled few days when everyone just kind of lost the plot and were doing everything, me included. Scott Bain admitted that Eddie Howe was an exciting name. Again, a lot of people may read into that thinking, oh, Scott Bain knows something. Why would he talk about Eddie Howe if there was no real substance to the rumours? No offence to Scott Bain, but he probably doesn't know much more than me or you. So when Celtic aren't telling us anything, we look to the past to see what Celtic have done in the past. Now, 20th of May 2016, the date may not mean a great deal to you, but you probably remember where you were and what the weather was like actually. I remember it was a brilliant sunny spring day and Celtic announced the appointment of Brendan Rodgers. It was a Friday afternoon and everything in the world was great. But did you know that less than 2 days prior to that, Celtic put a statement out on the club website saying that there was no preferred candidate in their search for a new manager? Now, I actually didn't know this, but my wonderful colleague, John, did. And he wrote an article about this on 67hailhail.com. So Celtic, less than 2 days prior to appointing Brendan Rodgers, put a statement out saying there was no preferred candidate. Now, what does this tell us about Eddie Howe's situation? Probably not a great deal, but it does just show how quickly things can change in football. We went from seemingly having no chance of bringing in Eddie Howe to probably 2 days later, everyone talking about what players he was first going to sign when he came to the club. That shows how quickly things can change, and so does that 2016 scenario. So it also tells us that Celtic don't really let much on until the final moment, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Now on to the Eddie Howe camp and that stinging statement that brought everyone back down to earth with an almighty thud last week. This is what they said. Talks of any deal being close are extremely premature. His plan remains to not return to management until the summer at the earliest. A lot of people's reaction to this was, again, to run about like their hair was on fire, to completely lose the plot. Again, I understand why, everyone is on edge, etc, etc. But these quotes didn't actually tell us anything we didn't already know. The chances of Howe coming in straight away, as opposed to the start of next season, were pretty minimal anyway. It's just an agent doing his job, effectively. Nothing really to worry about, even though that's what the vast majority of people did. Now on to the media, and most interestingly, the Scottish Daily Mail's chief football writer, which is one hell of a title, Stephen McGowan, was on Clyde Super Scoreboard last night, and he was asked by a caller for an update on the Eddie Howe situation. He said a lot, as is often the case on radio. You don't have time constraints like we do on this channel. I'm not going to read out all of what he said, but here's just one paragraph. The two sides seem more relaxed about it than the fans are. He met Dermot Desmond 2 weeks ago in London. There was an expectation things might move quickly because he's out of work, but that hasn't happened. But there might be reasons for that. McGowan went on to list some of those reasons. The most notable ones seem to be the apparent non-negotiable from Eddie Howe that Richard Hughes would come into Celtic in some capacity. Another one mentioned was Howe wondering how much money he would have to spend to effectively rebuild the entire Celtic first team. The main thing to take away from what McGowan was saying, for me anyway, is there's no need to panic. There's a calmness from Celtic and from Eddie Howe. We've got to remember that Celtic very much want Eddie Howe. That much is clear. He's the preferred candidate, even if the club won't admit it. Eddie Howe clearly has an interest in Celtic as well. How do we know that? Because the talks wouldn't have even got to this stage if he had no interest at all. He clearly has an interest. Both parties have an interest in each other. These things take time. I really see no reason to panic. Other reliable outlets with regards to in-the-know Celtic news, you should be looking at the Scottish Sun and also Alison McConnell. Neither of those have really backtracked on any of the statements they made during Howe-mania, although they haven't been quite as forthcoming with articles and reports. You no doubt know that. But again, a lot of people interpret the silence as a bad thing. I look at it as a bit of a calm before the Eddie Howe storm. Hopefully that's the case anyway. So when could we expect an appointment of Eddie Howe or any other Celtic manager? Well, the past seems to tell us that we're probably a wee bit off it yet. If you look at the last decade or so, the last 4 managers Celtic have brought in, the earliest one we brought in was round about the 20th of May. Howe clearly isn't going to start from the minute he's appointed, so there's not really too much to worry about if this does drag on for a wee bit more. I know a lot of people will look at the situation and look at the rebuilding that needs to be done at the club over the summer and think that Eddie Howe should be brought in as a manager straight away, or even be announced as a manager and be able to work on things in the background. But nobody really knows that isn't happening. Nobody knows that Eddie Howe hasn't formally agreed to be the Celtic manager, and it's just not been announced yet. I do genuinely think we'll see a bit of an upturn in our fortunes and in reports and talk about Eddie Howe once Dominic Mackay comes into the club next week. It will be interesting to see if that does have any impact on negotiations. If things speed up a little bit, maybe they'll just remain the same way. But the key thing for me just to put across in this video, and the key thing that I'm seeing from a lot of people in the know, is that there's really no real reason to panic. Stephen McGowan there saying that Celtic are relaxed about this situation, and if Celtic are relaxed, we all probably should be too.